Well, I have to assume she has a Facebook page. No, it's a great question. I'm being facetious there, obviously, but we have in the past on stories, and you guys know this. I mean, that's an avenue of pursuit. That's where you go for a lot of research nowadays. That said, in this case, do we want it? Yeah, I think we do. How do we get it? I think that you've got to. I think you've got to work. You're going to be working through the First Lady of the State of Canada's attorney. It would seem to me.
What about? Would it be unimaginable that a journalist would wait for the child at the school bus and meet the child? I mean, I don't know whether you would do that.
I guess my understanding based on the hypothetical was that the police had seized her phone as part of the arrest. So then the only way to really get that video, unless she had, Instagram storied her parents' fight or periscoped it or any of the number of ways that you can disseminate video online, would be to go through someone with very, very good police sources, or once it was turned over as part of the criminal case, to hopefully, I guess, go then to an attorney representing the family or to other sources and try to get it that way. I guess I thought the phone had been seized. To the other question, I personally would never wait for a child at a school bus. I think most people in most publications would consider that to be untoward and not an appropriate way to go about getting that material, when I believe it would have been collected just as part of the arrest.
It's interesting you say that, and I would be inclined to agree. Most people would say that's indecent. That's the word. It's just indecent to wait for a child at the school, through the school bus, and yet. This is hard to reconcile. I have no answer. And yet, this child was being maybe ruined for life by virtue of the exposure. So it's indecent to catch her at the school bus, but it's okay in the name of maybe a broader national interest to bring out the fact that she was a victim of child abuse. I'm just putting it out there. I'm not making any judgment of any kind.
Yeah, that's... But I don't think it really would be fair to blame the journal. I mean, the parents, as other people have mentioned, are putting her in this position, and unfortunately, we have to report on what's going on. So in a lot of respects of it, it's not necessarily, I don't believe, the press's fault that she's put in this position. Her parents are putting this out there in the public.
No one's blaming the press. I'm just wondering, at what point does a quest for truth collide with a general sense of decency? The first time, I think we all more or less established that if this child is going to be brought into it, it's because of a higher public interest. And yet, you're willing to say, and I think with good reason, that it doesn't strike you as right to wait for her at the school bus. So are there journalists that would wait for her at the school bus to ask her to describe what happened?
I'm sure there are, and I'm sure there are lots of editors who, would tell their reporters to go out and wait at the school bus. I do think that we're not talking about the same scenario when we're talking about, an allegation made or an accusation made by a parent about a domestic abuse situation versus like actually having. They seem to be very different to me. You have something that happens as part of the first family. You have something that happens within the unit of the first family that that would go to whether or not someone is fit for office versus an action then taken by an 11-year-old that somehow inserts herself into this process. It's just sort of I don't feel like they're equatable.
Interesting.
I think maybe journalists would post something on our social media saying, hey, could you please post that to YouTube? Because I think once it's on YouTube, you can use it.
There's an issue there, and Larry and I would probably talk about it. Copyright, basically, who owns the rights to this video, and frankly, posting it on her own Facebook page is the way that the copyright owner has chosen to display it to the world. But there's also very interesting fair use questions that can take a lot of debate and are interesting and take a lot of our time. So, it would be a discussion, but there's certainly reason to proceed with caution, I guess.